So as we all know, NPCs come in all shapes, sizes and allegiances. Some are extremely helpful support characters, others are annoying fools, and some fall somewhere in between. And then there are those NPCs that you initially trusted and yet turned out to be duplicitous turncoat butts, eventually showing their true colours and summarily screwing you over as a result. And that's what we're talking about today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game NPCs you shouldn't have trusted. Number 10. Atlas. BIOSHOCK. Throughout the original BIOSHOCK, players are guided through the City of Rapture by the support character Atlas, a revolutionary who they speak to via a radio for the majority of the game. Later on, however, it's revealed that Atlas is actually the heel conman Frank Fontaine, who faked his death and assumed the Atlas alias in order to agitate a civil war and take control of Rapture for himself. We also learn that Atlas's oft-repeated phrase, "would you kindly," which he uses whenever he asks a player to do something, is actually a hypnotic inducement, a trigger phase that forces protagonist Jack to do anything he asks without pushback. So the lesson here, if a game keeps a support character at arm's length from you and you never actually meet them in person, there might just be a good reason for it. Number 9. Basically everyone. Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest. Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest really takes the damn cake where dishonest NPCs are concerned. The game was designed to offer only vague hints at how players can progress, such that the various NPCs provide largely cryptic and scarcely comprehensible clues as to what you're supposed to bloody do. While the NPCs were always written to be dishonest and only offer vague hints at best, this was exacerbated when the game was localized for the West. Poor translation resulted in the NPCs' nuanced wordplay becoming lost, in turn making these piecemeal clues even more vague and even more confusing. And one of the more infamous localization gaffes involves the clue "hit DEBORAH cliff with your head to make a hole," which is a total nonsense statement which is basically close to useless. This is just one of the many examples of NPCs who are either intentionally misleading or are just so poorly translated as to be actively unhelpful. Hilarious it is, but it's also very annoying if you're trying to play through this without a guide. Number 8. The Blind Beggars. Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2's world is absolutely bustling with life and impossible levels of detail, including the presence of countless beggars on the streets of the various settlements that you pass through. And you might also periodically notice a blind beggar asking for spare change. And though you're free to throw some cash in his cap, there's also a chance that you'll discover on closer inspection that they're actually a faker trying to scam you. Hilariously, if you point a gun at the beggar, the faker will recoil in a way that indicates they saw exactly what you did. Though they'll initially try to save face, if you keep your gun pointed, they'll then undo their blindfold, admit their ruse, and run away with their tail between their legs. Otherwise, if you stick around after handing out some money, you might hear the beggar laugh at duping you, or even get up and just start walking off. Granted, your losses in this regard are minimal, but it's still a totally unexpected detail that further fleshes out how absolutely wild this game's Wild West truly is. Number 7. KREIA. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2: The Sith Lords. In Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, the player controls an exiled Jedi Knight who attempts to restore their connection to the Force with a little help from their friends. And one such friend is KREIA, the exile's mentor, who was eventually revealed to be Darth TRAYA, as in Darth BE-TRAYA, get it? And to hammer home the point, she also goes by the moniker the Lord of Betrayal. Ultimately, KREIA is revealed to have manipulated the player through half-truths and cryptic answers in an attempt to destroy the Force once and for all, as leads to a final confrontation between the two and KREIA's demise. But long before this reveal, she's actually presented as a prickly enough character that players should probably think her a little bit sus, especially after the original Knights of the Old Republic pulled off its own late-game identity-related plot twist. Still, KREIA is a fan favourite character for a reason, and as such, we wouldn't have it any other way. Number 6. Master Miller. Metal Gear Solid. Throughout the original Metal Gear Solid, Solid Snake is aided via codec by Master Miller, a former drill instructor and survivalist coach who basically serves as the moral support during the more arduous portions of Snake's mission. Yet the fact that Miller doesn't really dispense much in the way of tangible advice, sticking more to broad platitudes, probably should have clued in players to the deception that is happening right in front of their face. Late in the game, Miller reveals that he isn't actually Snake's pal, but rather the game's primary antagonist and Solid Snake's twin brother, Liquid Snake, who has tied his hair back and hidden his distinctive eyes behind a pair of sunglasses. At this moment, Colonel Campbell also reveals to Solid that the real Miller's body was just discovered at his home, having presumably been killed by Liquid, or indeed his men, in order to impersonate him. it's an ingenious twist that makes replaying the game a totally fascinating experience, knowing full well that every verbose conversation you have with Miller is just Liquid screwing with you and basically wasting your time. While anyone who noticed that Cam Clark voiced both Liquid and Miller probably thought nothing of it, it should actually be a total red flag to not trust Miller at all. Number 5. Maik the Liar. The Elder Scrolls. Now, in fairness, if a person literally goes by the moniker Maik the Liar, you've really only got yourself to blame if you take anything they say seriously. Nevertheless, Maik is a recurring Easter egg character in the Elder Scrolls series, having appeared in Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and the Elder Scrolls Online. During idle chit-chat, Maik will wax lyrical on a multitude of subjects. But for the most part, he's basically a stand-in for the developers, allowing them to pass commentary on the more absurd aspects of the Elder Scrolls' world in tongue-in-cheek fashion. Granted, most of Maik's claims are tall tales that most sensible players would take with a truckload of salt, including him telling you not to believe the claims that he is indeed a liar, but even so, he should clearly be trusted about as far as he can be thrown. Number 4. Eric Bloody Sparrow. Tony Hawk's Underground. While the stakes might not seem as high in a Tony Hawk's game compared to everything else on this list, that doesn't make Tony Hawk's Underground's Eric Sparrow any less of a detestable degenerate. Eric is the player character's best friend at the start of the game, but throughout Thug's surprisingly involved and wacky story, Eric becomes a routine thorn in your side, exhibiting patent self-interest and flat out screwing you over again and again. From needing the player to bail him out of jail to actively attempting to impede their career progress by passing their hard work off as his own, Eric's behavior is all the more infuriating because the protagonist gives Eric second, third, and fourth chances to not be an asshole, and he still is. This culminates in Eric drunkenly stealing a tank during a trip to Moscow, yes, you heard that right, and blaming the subsequent $700,000 worth of damage on the protagonist, getting him kicked off the skate team. Douchebags don't come in much stronger flavors than Eric, and while it's certainly satisfying defeating him at the game's end, the protagonist was clearly way too patient and way too trusting with him. Number 3. Everybody in ZOZO. Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI's town of ZOZO is home to criminals, thieves, and worst of all, liars who will do anything but offer you actual assistance. Aside from a single NPC south of the inn, every NPC you encounter will tell you a half-truth or flat-out porky pie. Hell, the first NPC that you come across even tells you, ZOZO, never heard of it, and another NPC who promises to let you pass will immediately start attacking. All in all, this really sets the tone for your time in this town. There's a quest in ZOZO that requires the player to set the inn's stopped clock to the correct time by asking the town's citizens what the current time actually is. Yet because everybody in ZOZO is a liar, you're basically forced to figure out answers by process of elimination, assuming that every time an NPC tells you is wrong until there's just 2 options left. At least in this case, the dishonesty is played for total laughs and is made almost immediately clear that nobody here should be taken at their word. Number 2. Patches. FromSoftware games. FromSoft's reoccurring trickster character Patches is one who fans love to hate. A patently dishonest tosspot, a proto-version of whom first appeared in the studio's 2008 game Armored Core for Answer, and has been a regular fixture in the titles ever since. Patches turned a lot of heads when he showed up in Demon's Souls the very next year as Patches the Hyena. Patches initially attempts to trap the player with the promise of treasure, later apologizing for it and offering to sell you items, but then kicking you down a hole in an attempt to kill you. He reappears as Trusty Patches in Dark Souls, Unbreakable Patches in Dark Souls 3, and Patches the Untethered in the recent Elden Ring, each as tricksters who aid the player in one breath and attempt to sell them down the river in the next. Patches also shows up in Nightmare Fuel's spider form in Bloodborne, where despite his more uniquely grotesque appearance is once again up to his usual chicanery, promising the player riches only to set them up for a downfall. Despite this, Patches is such a charming scamp in this bleak and desolate world that it's basically impossible to not like him at least a little bit. Patches can't ever be trusted, but you would definitely miss him if FromSoftware ever retired him. And number 1, Master Lee. Jade Empire. Betrayals don't come much more crushing than this. Master Lee is the Spirit Monk's mentor in the first half of cult classic RPG Jade Empire, but once you defeat the apparent big bad, Lee reveals his true colors by straight up murdering your ass, stealing your goodies, and installing himself as the new emperor. Players then have to navigate their way back to the land of the living for their revenge confrontation with Master Lee. Story-wise, it's certainly a compelling twist on the overly familiar master-apprentice dynamic that we've seen done to death in martial arts media, and at the same time totally demoralizing that our seemingly wise mentor had basically been using us this entire damn time to get what he wanted. And the lesson learned here is that there is no such thing as a free lunch, and if somebody's giving you an awesome gift seemingly out of the goodness of their hearts, like training you up to be a badass warrior for example, they might just have an ulterior motive. And there we go, my friends, those were 10 video game NPCs you shouldn't have trusted. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. There is one thing that you can trust, my friend, and that is me telling you that you deserve love, happiness, and success, because it is damn well true. You deserve all of the best things in life, and do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise, alright? Trust in yourself, believe in yourself, and I really hope that you smash your life goals today. Big love to you. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.